Not everyone around you is for you. Some wear a smile, speak your language, even break bread with you. But behind the scenes, they chip away at your peace. I'm not here to stir paranoia. I'm here to sharpen your discernment. Because sometimes the battle isn't in the world, it's in your circle. And if we don't learn how to spot the demons in our friends and family, we'll keep calling sabotage love. One of the most dangerous things we can do is mistake emotion for evidence. Just because we feel connected to someone doesn't mean they're good for us. Love doesn't always equal loyalty, and familiarity doesn't guarantee safety. That's where discernment comes in. Discernment is the quiet voice that speaks underneath the noise of your emotions. It's the clarity that whispers something's not right even when your heart wants to believe everything is fine. But here's the catch. Discernment doesn't yell. Emotion does. Emotion wants to be loud. It wants to rush in, defend people, explain things away. Oh, they didn't mean it like that. They were just having a bad day. Their family. It's complicated. And suddenly, you're making a habit of tolerating harm, all in the name of love. We've been conditioned to think that love should override all, especially when it comes to friends and family. That if someone's close to us, we owe them unlimited chances. But discernment says no. It says, pay attention. You've seen the signs. You've felt the shift. You know the weight in your chest every time they walk in the room. That's not a fluke. That's not oversensitivity. That's spiritual intelligence doing its job, trying to keep you safe. Now, don't get me wrong. Having discernment doesn't mean you're being judgmental. It means you're being wise. Judgment is about condemnation. Discernment is about protection. It's not about calling someone a demon. It's about recognizing when a spirit of manipulation, envy, or deception is working through them, because those things can work through the people closest to us. Your discernment isn't accusing them. It's alerting our you. And here's where it gets tough. When you truly start listening to that still, small voice, you'll begin to notice the little things. The passive-aggressive comments, the subtle competition, the way your boundaries are met with guilt instead of respect. Before discernment, you might have brushed it off as personality, but after, you start to see the pattern, and the pattern is what reveals the truth. See, people can fake moments, they can fake good days, fake support, fake empathy, but what they can't fake for long is consistency. Discernment watches for that. It's not swayed by one good apology or one big gesture. It wants to know, how do they treat you when you're down? When you say no, when you win, and when your emotions try to drag you back into the cycle. Remind yourself emotion is the reaction, but discernment is the decision. You feel attached to them, sure, that's real, but you can feel attached to something unhealthy. You can feel love and still not be loved back in a healthy way. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But when you ignore your discernment, you stop protecting your spirit, and that's when you open doors to chaos. Here's the truth. Your discernment will cost you comfort. It will ask you to pull back from people you once leaned on. It will push you to set boundaries with people who are used to access. It will even have you grieving the version of the relationship you thought you had. But what it gives you in return is priceless peace, clarity, and freedom from cycles that were never meant to continue. If you're waiting for something dramatic to happen before you take your feelings seriously, you're already too far in. Demonic influence doesn't always show up in some horror movie fashion. Sometimes it shows up in the friend who plants seeds of doubt every time you're confident. Sometimes it's the family member who subtly undermines your growth because it threatens their control. You don't need a dramatic betrayal to validate your unease. You just need to trust your knowing. Because the truth is, peace doesn't lie, and neither does discernment. Words can lie. Energy can't. We've all heard people say the right things. I love you. I'm here for you. I only want what's best for you. And for a moment, it sounds good. It lands right. But deep down, something doesn't feel settled. Something feels off. And that off feeling is your warning sign. That's your spirit picking up on the truth behind the words. That's energy talking. You ever leave a conversation feeling more confused than when you entered it, even though the person said all the right things? That's not just emotional overload. That's your body reacting to misalignment. Because energy isn't just about vibes or intuition. It's the atmosphere people carry with them. It's what enters the room before they even speak. Some people bring calm. Others bring chaos. Some people lift the temperature in the room with hope. Others suck all the air out of it with comparison, bitterness, or fear, even if they never say a word out loud. Here's the thing. You cannot afford to ignore that kind of weight. You cannot overlook how your body reacts around someone just because your history with them is long or your love for them is deep. Just because someone is part of your circle doesn't mean they're safe for your spirit. And when you measure people only by what they say, you miss the reality of who they are. You've probably had a moment where someone smiled at you, but it didn't reach their eyes. They gave you a compliment, but it came wrapped in a jab. That's the disconnect I'm talking about. Their words were clean, but the energy was dirty, and you felt it. Don't gaslight yourself. That tension you noticed, it was real. That shift in the atmosphere, it was real. That subtle undercurrent of jealousy, resentment, or control, all of that was real. Stop waiting for people to say what they're showing you every time they show up. We've been trained to listen for tone, for words, for phrasing, but energy is the truth teller. You can't fake that long term. So ask yourself, do I feel safe in this person's presence? Do I feel like I can breathe when I'm with them? Or am I constantly on edge, editing myself, minimizing my success, shrinking to avoid tension? That's not love. That's spiritual conflict. That's a sign that something else is working through them, and it's not aligned with your peace. What makes this even trickier is that the most toxic energy often hides behind the most polished language. Some people are master manipulators. They speak with sugar but move with venom. They use calm tones and spiritual phrases to cloak control. They'll say they're looking out for you, but they're really managing you. They'll call it advice, but it's really discouragement wrapped in concern. And if you're only focused on their words, you'll miss the pull on your soul. But if you focus on the energy, the atmosphere, the way your spirit reacts, you'll see them clearly. And no, it's not about cutting everyone off the moment you feel tension. It's about noticing the consistent patterns in how someone's presence affects your peace. One bad day, we all have those. But if every time you're with them, you leave feeling less like yourself, that's not just a coincidence. That's exposure. You're being shown the truth, not with words, but with presence. People can't always tell you they've changed, but energy shows you whether they have or not. That's why we don't need to beg for clarity from people. We don't need long explanations, dramatic confrontations, or full breakdowns of who did what. We just need to pay attention. Peace is a powerful communicator. When someone brings you peace, your spirit knows it. And when they don't, it knows that too. Energy doesn't lie. Pay attention. One of the biggest mistakes we make when dealing with people, especially those we care about, is giving too much weight to isolated moments instead of watching the pattern. We forgive quickly, explain things away, and convince ourselves that what we experienced wasn't that bad because the moment passed. But one moment doesn't define a person. Patterns do. We all mess up. We all say the wrong thing or have an off day. That's human. But when someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, constantly belittles you in subtle ways, always seems to show up when they need something, but vanish when you do, that's not an accident. That's a pattern. And patterns are where character lives. If someone gossips about everyone else to you, chances are they're also gossiping about you to someone else. If someone always finds a way to be the victim, no matter the situation, that's not bad luck. That's a cycle of deflection, a cycle of manipulation. And over time, if you're not paying attention, you'll find yourself tangled in someone else's dysfunction, calling it friendship, calling it family, calling it love, when really it's just a recurring pattern wearing a familiar face. The thing about patterns is that they don't require drama to be destructive. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who never raise their voice, never break a plate, never storm out, but they consistently over time chip away at your confidence. They subtly challenge your choices. They make jokes that land like jabs, and you start questioning your own value, your own path, without realizing they've been doing that all along, quietly, repeatedly. You can't keep judging people based on their apologies either. Anyone can be sorry once. Anyone can say the right thing after they get caught or called out. But someone who eyes means it, someone who truly wants to do better, will show it not in what they say once, but in how they behave moving forward. Words without change. That's not growth, that's performance. So if you want to know what someone's really about, stop listening to their isolated words and start observing their consistent behavior. How do they respond to your boundaries? How do they act when you succeed? Are they genuinely supportive, or do they go quiet every time you take a step forward? Do they make space for your growth, or do they feel threatened by it? Do they encourage your healing, or do they try to keep you in roles that benefit them more than they benefit you? Because here's the truth. People reveal themselves all the time. They just do it subtly in patterns. It's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's in the way they never show up for you unless there's something in it for them. Sometimes it's in the way they always seem to bring conversations back to themselves, no matter what you're going through. Sometimes it's in the way they can never truly be happy for you. Just polite. You've got to get real honest with yourself. Stop romanticizing potential. Stop holding on to the idea of who someone could be if only they changed. Look at what they actually do. Are they loving you or controlling you? Are they supporting your growth or subtly sabotaging it? You won't find the answer in one big event. You'll find it in the little choices they make every day. Choices that, when put together, create a pattern. And let's be honest, deep down, you already see it. You've been seeing it. But sometimes it's easier to hold on to the history than to confront the truth. Easier to hope they'll get better than to accept they probably won't. But discernment isn't about comfort. It's about clarity. And clarity says when someone shows you who they are repeatedly, believe them. Don't get caught up in the highlight reel. Pay attention to the consistent behavior. Patterns don't lie. One of the hardest dynamics to recognize, especially in people we love, is control. Not the obvious kind. Not someone yelling in your face or locking doors. I'm talking about the subtle kind, the kind that hides in guilt, the kind that comes wrapped in, I'm just worried about you, or after all I've done for you. It's not loud, but it's heavy, and it makes you second guess yourself more than it ever makes them take responsibility. This is where control gets tricky. It doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like emotional debt. Like every time you try to set a boundary, you're hit with a reminder of your past, of their sacrifices, of how you used to be so close. Suddenly, you're not just protecting your peace, you're defending your right to even have it. That's not love. That's not connection. That's control dressed as concern. And guilt is its favorite weapon. Because if someone can't change your decision, they'll try to change how you feel about it. They'll make you question whether you're being selfish or too harsh or different now that you've healed. They'll paint your growth as betrayal. And if you're not careful, you'll go right back to shrinking yourself just to keep their feelings intact. But here's what you need to know. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal. Choosing peace isn't selfish. Saying no even to someone you love isn't wrong. It's called self-respect. It's called discernment. And people who genuinely care about you won't punish you for choosing yourself. Still, the hardest part is when they don't yell. They don't fight. They flip the script. That's where gaslighting walks in. They'll make you feel like the problem for even bringing it up. You say, that hurt me. And they say, you're too sensitive. You say, this pattern doesn't sit right. And they say, I think you're overreacting. You say, this boundary is important. And suddenly they're crying, telling you how they failed you, how they're the worst person in the world. Now you're comforting wisdom even though you're the one who was hurt. That's gaslighting, and that's spiritual warfare in disguise. And what makes it worse is when it comes from people you never expected. A parent, a sibling, a childhood friend, people you love so deeply you'd never imagine they'd manipulate your heart. But sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who know exactly which strings to pull. Not because they're evil, but because they're operating from unhealed places. Because somewhere along the line, they confused control with love, and now they're passing that confusion onto you. But just because they're hurting doesn't mean it's your job to carry the weight. You can love someone deeply and still protect yourself from the ways they're harming you. That's not disloyal. That's maturity. That's discernment in action. And let me tell you, if someone always makes you feel like the villain for having needs, for speaking truth, for drawing a line, that's not a relationship. That's a trap. And the longer you stay, the more you'll shrink, the more you'll doubt your own voice, the more you'll filter everything you say through a lens of, will they be okay with this? While completely forgetting to ask, am I okay with this? That's what control does. It teaches you to put someone else's comfort over your own clarity, to silence your own discernment just to keep the peace. But that's not real peace. That's emotional captivity. At some point, you have to stop negotiating with guilt and start walking with truth, because anyone who genuinely loves you should want you to feel safe, even when you disagree. Anyone who really values you should be able to hear your no without turning it into a crisis. Love doesn't require you to abandon yourself. It invites you to bring your full self forward and still be embraced. So if you feel like you're always the one apologizing, always the one bending, always the one carrying the emotional weight of the relationship, pause. Ask yourself, is this love, or is this control wearing love's face? Because real love doesn't confuse power with connection. It honors both people, not just the one who speaks the loudest. Control might sound like concern. Guilt might wear the mask of love, and gaslighting might come in a calm voice. But your peace will always tell the truth. It's one thing to face resistance from strangers. That's expected. But when the resistance comes from people you've loved, shared memories with, prayed with, cried with, that's different. That kind of pain hits deeper. And what makes it harder to see is when it's not loud hatred, but quiet competition. You don't expect to compete with someone who claps for you. Someone who says, I'm proud of you, with a smile, but the joy never quite reaches their eyes. Someone who's been close for years, maybe even family. But then you start noticing the shift. You share good news and suddenly the mood changes. You get a promotion and their energy tightens. You post something you're proud of and they don't like it, but they've been watching, always watching. Silently, we think enemies are going to be obvious, that they'll come at us directly. But real discernment is required when the opposition comes wrapped in friendship, when the person secretly sizing you up also hugs you at the family gathering, when the one who throws shade is also the one dropping Bible verses in your inbox. That's a spiritual battle, not because they're evil, but because competition has crept into the relationship. And now what used to be connection has turned into comparison. You've got to be honest with yourself. Are they really supporting you or just tolerating your growth? Do they encourage you or do they keep trying to subtly one-up you in conversation? And most importantly, why do you keep minimizing yourself to make them comfortable? Because here's what happens when someone starts competing with you and you don't address it. You begin shrinking. You downplay your blessings. You soften your excitement. You make yourself smaller just to preserve the relationship. But no connection worth having should require you to dim your light. And I know what some people say, that's just how they are. They're just going through something. They didn't mean it like that. And maybe that's true. Maybe they are struggling, but that doesn't make your discernment any less accurate. You're not crazy for noticing the change. You're not overreacting for feeling the tension. When people are secretly competing with you, they will never celebrate you with their whole heart. They'll give you partial support, halfway affirmation, because deep down, your success reminds them of what they haven't stepped into yet. And I want you to hear this. It is not your responsibility to shrink so someone else feels secure. That's not humility. That's bondage. You can be gracious. You can be compassionate, but you should never be guilty for growing. It's hard though, especially when it's someone close, because we hold on to the good memories. We replay the good times. We remember when things felt safe, when you were both on the same page. But time has passed. You've changed. Maybe they haven't. Maybe your healing disrupted their comfort. Maybe your growth exposed the places in them they haven't dealt with. And instead of joining you, they started measuring themselves against you. That doesn't make you better. It doesn't make them worse. It just means the relationship may need new boundaries. And sometimes it means creating space, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, because competition can't survive where there's real love. Real love doesn't compete. It uplifts. It multiplies. It celebrates without envy. If someone only supports you when they feel ahead of you, that's not love. That's control dressed in kindness. And your discernment knows the difference, even when your heart doesn't want to admit it. So stop ignoring the signs. Stop shrinking to protect fragile egos. If the atmosphere changes every time you win, you're not imagining it, and you're not wrong for noticing it. Not everyone who's around you is for you. Watch the fruit. Watch the patterns. Watch hidden competition is still a threat. It just whispers instead of shouts. Your peace isn't just a feeling. It's a radar. It's one of the clearest signals you've got in this life. But most people are too busy, too loyal, or too afraid to pay attention to it. And if you're not careful, you'll start dismissing your peace like it's optional, like it's something you only get to have after everyone else is okay. But your peace is the alarm system of your spirit. When it goes off, something is wrong. You ever walk into a room and feel yourself tense up for no obvious reason? Ever answer a phone call and feel your stomach tighten before a word is even said? That's not drama. That's not imagination. That's your inner radar saying, hey, pay attention here. The body always knows. The spirit always knows. The issue is we've been trained to override it with logic, with guilt, with long histories and second chances. We convince ourselves to stay where our peace has already left. Sometimes your peace leaves before you do, and that's the hint, that's the nudge. But instead of listening, we try to rationalize it away. They didn't mean it. Well, I'm probably just overthinking. It's not that deep, but it is that deep. Your peace doesn't lie, it doesn't need to shout. It speaks in stillness, in discomfort, in that quiet voice inside that says, this doesn't feel right. And the more you ignore it, the louder the consequences get. Some of you are exhausted and you don't know why, because it's not your schedule, it's your surroundings. You're drained not because of your workload, but because of who you keep giving your energy to. Every conversation feels like work. Every interaction feels like a performance. That's not alignment, that's spiritual friction, and peace doesn't live there. And I know what the pushback is, but I love them. Of course you do. But peace isn't about love, it's about safety. It's about alignment. You can love someone and still not feel safe in their energy. You can have a long history with someone and still know deep down they're not good for your nervous system. That doesn't make you mean. That makes you honest. That makes you awake. Because here's the truth. Peace is the most powerful diagnostic tool in any relationship. You don't need a big betrayal to know something's off. Just watch how your spirit reacts. Are you calm in their presence, or are you performing? Do you feel seen or do you feel managed? Do you feel lighter when they leave or when they arrive? Those aren't just passing emotions. Those are messages. And let me be clear, peace isn't the absence of hard conversations. It's not about comfort zones or echo chambers. Sometimes the most peaceful relationships are the ones that challenge you the most, but they do it in love. They don't strip you. They don't drain you. They don't gaslight you into thinking your sensitivity is the problem. They hold space for you to show up fully, even when things get tough. That's how you know it's real. Because peace doesn't mean perfection. It means safety. It means freedom. It means that even in disagreement, your soul isn't in panic mode. But for some of us, peace has felt so unfamiliar for so long that we confuse chaos with connection. We think tension is passion. We think walking on eggshells is just part of closeness. It's not. That's trauma. That's unresolved pain dressed up as loyalty. And it keeps us tied to people we were never meant to stay tied to. So start tuning back in. Pay attention to the moments your peace leaves the room. Who were you talking to? What were you talking about? How did your body respond? That's the truth. Not what they said, not what they promised, but how your spirit responded. That's your radar doing its job. Because at the end of the day, you don't need more opinions. You don't need a group chat breakdown. You just need to start trusting the part of you that already knows your peace isn't fragile. It's sacred. And if it leaves, follow it. Where peace won't stay, you don't need to either. So here's the truth. Plain and clear, the real battle isn't always outside. It's often happening quietly, right in the center